Hello, this is Scarlet and Rage podcast. We are coming to you with our weekly um, episode. And so we also have some news for you. We are going to be doing 2 episodes a week. Look for an episode every Monday. And Jay, have we decided on a secondary day yet?
No, we haven't, but just
Okay,
be
we're
expecting
going.
2
Yeah,
episodes.
yeah. So right now there'll be a second one following the Monday episode. Eventually, we'll probably get that on a schedule. But for now, just be looking for the second episode that will drop and the one that will be there every Monday morning. If you would hit that like button and subscribe, if you have not, thank you guys who have subscribed. We're not that far from 1,000 subs. See if we can push it and get to 1,000. I appreciate all of you that have subscribed here recently. Rage, you have got a plethora of Big Ten recruiting information at your disposal, and I know you are ready to let it fly.
Yes, Michael. When we started this podcast, I would like to say that we're not just an Ohio State-based podcast. We made that very clear from the beginning. I understand we had our hiatus and everything. We've been mostly talking about Ohio State, but Michigan fans, you're aware that we covered you guys a lot during your national championship run, and we gladly cheered for you because we're Ohio State fans first and Michigan fans second. And in our discovery, we discovered that Ohio State does well when the Big Ten does well. Michael, would you agree?
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. But that you just said, I'm 100% in agreement with it. But that's what makes a lot of Ohio State fans mad at us, is because we will say, yeah, we definitely want to beat Michigan and we want to win the national championship. But if we don't, we would rather Michigan win the national championship than Alabama or Georgia or one of those other schools. And I'd say the same thing for Penn State I guess now to some degree USC and Oregon. I'm warming up to them as Big Ten members. It's still a little weird that all the West Coast teams are there, but yeah, I totally agree, Jay.
And here's a question, Michael. Does Ohio State have the offseason they did in the transfer portal if Michigan doesn't win the national championship?
No, Ohio State is not the favorite to win the national championship this year if Michigan doesn't win the national championship last year. It was the greatest thing for Ohio State football for Michigan to win the national championship. Thank you, Michigan.
Yes,
I
thank you,
said it.
Michigan. Thank you. Yeah, I say it too. Thank you. And if Ohio State somehow fails this year, we'll be cheering for you again, and any other Big Ten team that makes it.
Yeah, that's right. So, but anyhow, Jay, let's
Let's
see
get
what.
into it.
Yeah,
All right. So I don't think across the spectrum you're going to have a podcast like this. And we as a conference have a major problem, Michael.
hmm
And that problem is recruiting.
yeah, it's not looking good this year.
I understand the demographics are not in our favor, but the SEC is plucking our state's best players, Michael.
Yeah, yeah,
Right now, the top 10 recruiting classes in the country for the class of 2025. I'm not going to 2024 or
yeah,
2023, but 2025 as it stands right now, 8 teams, Michael, 8 teams from the SEC are in the top 10.
yeah.
One, and then that leaves Ohio State, and the other is Notre Dame. So that means the Big Ten only has one team in the top 10.
It's not good.
And the Big Ten actually doesn't make an appearance until brand new member Oregon comes in at number 12. And Oregon has a lot of star power in that class, but not much quantity. So in time, that star average is only going to drop closer to signing day because the best players are running out as we speak.
Yeah, they will gain some points though when they add 5 or 6 or 7 of those 3 stars there. Could shoot them into the top 10, possibly, depending on how other teams ahead of them close.
Yeah. So Michael, just on that note, just from that statistic of the top 10, basically all of the teams are in from the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
What thoughts do you have just right off the bat, just from that? Like, the Big Ten being non-existent and the SEC completely just taking over?
Well, I mean, I guess my thoughts on that are, while I know that if you've got 10 teams, um, 6 of them are probably going to be SEC teams, because there are things in their favor as far as the type of talent that is in their backyard. But there's no reason that there shouldn't be 4 Big Ten teams, or at the worst, 7 SEC teams and 3 Big Ten teams. And with the addition of what was supposed to be national recruiting power of USC and Oregon, I'm sorry, guys, so far you're not bringing that. We're looking for you guys to be bringing the top 10 talent into the conference. In my mind, that was part of the deal is bringing in a couple of more teams that are right there in the top 10 of everything.
It still feels weird to consider Oregon, USC, Washington, and UCLA a part of the Big Ten, but I'm just, for the sake of this podcast, I'm not going to mention them as much. Yeah, Oregon's doing a fine job on the recruiting trail, but, they're ranked 12th. Nothing, star average is great, but we'll see how they finish down the line. But Michigan fans, buckle in now. I'm a little disappointed in your recruiting efforts right now. So I'm just going to start it off and just say, like, Michigan last season, last recruiting season, the best player in your state and legacy recruit, CJ Carr, goes to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Jay,
this season, a Midwest kid from Chicago flips from Michigan to attend Auburn.
That's
terrible.
Nathaniel
Marshall is his name.
That is terrible. That's a
How
terrible
is that
miss.
even fucking possible? How is that possible?
How can he pass up? Okay, if you're a Michigan kid, how can you pass up? Forget that. If I'm an Ohio kid, how do I pass up the big house, the game to go to Auburn? How do I do that? Like, if I was an Ohio kid or a Michigan kid, and let's say Ohio State didn't want me and Michigan did, it was between Michigan and Auburn, I'm going to go to Michigan, period.
Well, conventional wisdom would say so, but something failed. Something failed. I don't know if it's the NIL. Yeah, I mean, again, how is that possible? I don't want to hear anything about NIL though, because from what I've heard, Michigan is actually competitive there. Are they as good as like maybe the big dogs? I don't think so, but they're good enough. Michigan, we love you here. Like, we love you here for what you did for our conference last season. We really do. But Jim Harbaugh is not here anymore. Yeah. He is gone. And as well as a lot of your key assistants. I mean, I don't believe what you're doing right now on the recruiting trail is sustainable to keep up what you're doing with such poor recruiting results. I really don't. I mean, like, Michael, like, what are your thoughts on this? Like, Michigan needs to do a lot better. They can't be losing kids from the Midwest to the SEC. No. They need to be able to recruit the Southeast a little better than they do. I mean, it's a plethora of problems here.
These are my thoughts, Jay, that if Michigan wants to remain something close to what you saw the last 3 years, they're going to have to consistently recruit between about 8 to 12. They don't need to fall much lower than 12. Now, they're efficient enough, it seems like, in the culture that, they don't necessarily have to have 1 through 5, but they can't be down 14, 15, 18, 20, the way that they've been here in recent years. The program is going to struggle to be more than a top 12 to 15 type team in the country unless the recruiting significantly steps up quickly.
Michigan was able to win the way they did through scouting, development, and coaching. We said it last year. Michigan had the best coaching staff in the country, bar none last year. Jim Harbaugh has etched himself as one of the best coaches in the history of college football. You can make an argument like what he did last season was arguably the greatest season a coach has ever had in the history of college football. To take a team like 14th in the talent composite and have not far and away, but they were the best team in the country to do it with that kind of talent. It's not like they had a bunch of first rounders go to the NFL. I think they had JJ McCarthy might have been the only one. I forget.
I can tell you. Go ahead. But go ahead and go on to your next point. I'll tell you if any other Michigan guys want.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, Jim Harbaugh's gone. We don't know what you have with Sharon Moore. Yeah, he coached like 2 games against Penn State and Ohio State. Actually, no, the last couple games. What am I thinking? So I think he's a solid coach? Yeah, I actually do think Sharon Moore is a solid coach. But we don't know that he's Jim Harbaugh yet. Again, that was Jim Harbaugh's program that he was basically just running, which was a machine. And now he's gone. And now like Sharon Moore is supposed to be like this, like very good. I don't know if I would call him a great recruiter, but a very good recruiter, best offensive line coach in the nation. And he's just struggling to hit on the Midwest kids, man. That shouldn't happen. Like you should be able to land the kids from Illinois and Michigan over the SEC.
Jay, after McCarthy, Michigan's next guy drafted last year was the 49th pick in the second round.
Yeah, so I was right. They only had 1 first-round pick. So they didn't have like ultra superstars on last year's team, and we knew that. They just had a bunch of very good college players and solid, going to be like players in the NFL, but they're not like they didn't have like 4 or 5 first-round picks like 2021 Georgia did.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was an incredible coaching job, but yeah, the recruiting's got to step up with Michigan.
And again, this doesn't mean because of the 12-team playoff, I don't want to see the Big Ten getting lazy. They're like, oh, we have more margin for error. Oh, okay, well, so does the SEC. The SEC is going to pass. I mean, you tell me all day long that the look test doesn't matter, but it does. Like these SEC teams are just going to look better on the field. They're going to have more explosive offenses. They're going to have bigger, longer, faster athletes. People are going to notice that, and they're going to give the SEC the benefit of the doubt, as they should. They've mostly won in the 21st century over any other conference.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's true. And so the way to begin to reverse that is to recruit at a high level and have 3 or 4 Big Ten teams that can be in the mix.
Moving on to the next team, Michael. And yeah, Michigan, we're done with you for now. But these next couple teams, I'm really, really pissed off about. Really, really pissed off about. And not even the next team, but the teams after that, which are going to be a surprise to you, Michael. Yeah. And a surprise to our audience, too, I think, by the way. The next team on the list is Penn State, Michael. The Penn State Nittany Lions. So just some background information here on what Penn State's been doing on the recruiting trail, Michael. Their best player in their state is a quarterback by the name of Matt Zollers. He is headed to Missouri. This is a guy in the 2025 class. He's from Philadelphia, which I don't know if that's really Penn State country or not, but Penn State is like the closest major, college football team to Philadelphia. Well, yeah. How is that possible? How is it possible that like the top quarterback in the state goes from Missouri or goes from Philadelphia, skips Penn State, and goes to Missouri? I understand Missouri had a really, really good team last year, but Penn State is Penn State. What the fuck is Missouri historically?
Yeah, not a powerhouse by any means.
Yeah, I think their greatest season of all time, I think, was literally last year. I think it's like beating Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl was their biggest win ever, damn near.
Right, yeah, probably was. I mean, they had a few decent teams back when the Cal Daniels years, back 2005, 6, 7, 8. They had a few decent teams, but no.
Yeah, that quarterback. Yeah, but this team last year was better than those teams.
Yeah.
Their third best player in the state, by the way. People wouldn't know this, but the third best player in their state is a player by the name of Michael Carroll, another Philadelphia kid. He actually transferred to IMG, so he doesn't show up in the recruiting rankings as being a Pennsylvania kid. He shows up as a Florida kid, which is really fucked up. Like, if you play at IMG and you're transferring from another state, you should still be listed with that previous state, but that's another argument.
Right.
He is, a very rare breed of offensive tackle, not found in our footprint of the Big Ten, headed to Alabama. Your own, that's blasphemy, man. That blasphemy that an offensive tackle that big, that talented is heading from Philadelphia to Alabama. Penn State, you're only ranked 15th in the 247 composite with 23 commitments, which pretty much means your class is about done. Your star average is awful for the success your program has had in its history. Now, I will say you have been absolutely skull-drugged by the SEC in recent bowl games, which does not help your case. Yes, you beat Auburn in the regular season back-to-back. that was great, but getting blasted in bowl games by teams like Arkansas and Ole Miss last year, like that's definitely not good. And I don't care that you were down some secondary players against Ole Miss in your bowl game. You should be able to find a way to beat Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. Your 2022 recruiting class is getting farther and farther away. And after this season, a lot of those guys are going to be going off to the NFL, like what the heck is his name? Danny Dennis Sutton. And then the linebacker? Oh man, his name escapes me now. He got moved to edge, and his name would come back to me later on. But that 2022 class that finished in the top 10 is a class Penn State should be getting every single season. But here they are 15th in the composite, and people are acting like things are okay. Now, Penn State, I don't frequent your message boards like that. Maybe things aren't okay. But, we know James Franklin and Ryan Day are essentially the same coach. It's just Ryan Day has better resources and, the ability to recruit better. But I really thought James Franklin with his SEC ties would be able to recruit a lot better than he has been. Michael, what are your thoughts on Penn State and their struggles in recruiting?
Jay, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what's going on over there. It's not something I followed closely. I just see where they are in the ranking, and I don't know. Obviously they got to do better. The talent's just not where it needs to be. There's a reason they always lose to Ohio State, because there's just a big talent gap between the two. And Jay, I'm going to have to pause and take a break and go to the restroom real quick. We'll edit all of this out.
Okay.
We are back. We edited out that little break. I had to get up and take a little break for just a moment. And so we were talking about Penn State. And Jay, I was just saying that I don't know what's going on there. I mean, are they not? I would think that between Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, DC, Northern Virginia, I would think that there'd be plenty of relatively fertile recruiting ground for them to put together top 10, 12 type classes.
Well, I can say conventional wisdom would say yes, but conventional wisdom from the 1980s and 90s would say yes. Nowadays, you look at like the state of Pennsylvania, and it's, like right now they have 2 players in the composite top 100. That's not going to cut it. And that makes the margin of error that much graver of a problem for the Big Ten. It's like, okay, the limited amount of players you do have in your state, you got to keep them, and they're not keeping them. So if you're not going to go into the Southeast and get elite players, and you're not keeping your players home, then what are you doing?
Well, I mean, that's there. I guess you just named the problem. If you're not getting the in-state kids, you're in trouble. Yeah, I mean, why is Ohio State not going over and plucking an in-state kid that doesn't want to go to Penn State? That's another question. That could be a good area for them as well. The kids that don't want to go to Penn State. But yeah, you can't lose those guys to the SEC.
No, you can't. You can't lose them in the SEC. You can't lose them at all. Like, you should keep your best players here. You should keep your best players in state. I mean, there's really nothing else to be said about that. I'm going to move on to 2 teams, Michael, that are really just, conventional wisdom would say they're not. But I really, really, really want to blast both of these teams. 2 massive disappointments. And they are Rutgers and Maryland.
Yeah. Boy, I mean, we just did not get a lot of football in that edition between those 2 schools. And it looks like it's out to stay that way with the recruiting prowess that's being exhibited so far.
So let's start off with Rutgers. First off, it's really sad that there are fans out there that actually think Rutgers is recruiting well right now. 26th ranked recruiting class with 29 commitments. 22nd recruiting class with 29 fucking commitments. An 87 overall recruit average. That is god awful and shouldn't be applauded and shouldn't be the standard for a program that is in New Jersey with teams nearby such as Bergen Catholic, Don Bosco Prep, and St. Peter's Prep. You should be able to recruit that Big North Conference in your area and get most of the top players in that conference. In the 2024 class in the state of New Jersey, your top 4 players all left New Jersey, 2 going to Georgia, 1 going to Texas A&M, and 1 going to Syracuse. Just despicable recruiting by Greg Schiano. Schiano, in my opinion, has not impressed me much with what he's done at Rutgers. I thought he would be recruiting much better with his past history at Rutgers back in like the mid 2000s or 2010, should I say, and then being in Tampa for a while with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and his connections to Florida. So just massive fucking failure there, man, especially on the recruiting trail. They should be doing a hell of a lot better than they are.
Yeah, I'm with you. Nothing else to add. It's alarming how many guys out of the Big Ten footprint left the Big Ten footprint this year. I mean, do you know how much more talent would be in the Big Ten next year if we just kept everything in the footprint?
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. The Big Ten footprint is not nearly as talented as the SEC footprint, but if we kept our best players home, especially players like one player that comes to mind last year, Justin Scott from Chicago, Illinois, that Ohio State had flipped from them and then went to Miami.
Yep.
Like that was a huge loss. And same with the defensive end from Illinois that also went to Miami.
Yep.
Like
Lightfoot.
Yeah, that's right. Marquise Lightfoot.
Mm-hmm.
Feel bad for him that Lori Lightfoot is his aunt, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for real. That's bad.
Bad.
Yeah. Anywho, yeah. So 2 elite level players. I'm not even asking them to go to Ohio State, but go to Illinois. Like Illinois. I mean, I didn't even bring them up, but Illinois is a college. I know it's a few hours away from Chicago, but they are still in Illinois. They have Chicago in their not their backyard, but in their state. How are they not very good? Why are they not back to the days like recruiting as well as Ron Zook?
Yeah. Well, I don't know, Jay. I mean, I think that this is probably something we need to look into. Is it recruiting budgets? Is the Big Ten still being stingy on recruiting budgets versus the SEC? Could that be some of the problem? I don't know. I mean, the bottom line is we're just not landing the kids that they should be keeping in conference this year.
Well, I know Ohio State's stingy on recruiting budgets. Georgia, crazy enough, in their location, has the #1 recruiting budget in the nation.
Yeah, I knew that.
Which is just despicable. Maybe Ross Bjork fixes that, but that is just despicable. Moving on to the next team, the Maryland Terrapins.
Jay,
yes.
Let me just say this. If you can get results, I know you don't want to just spend money and waste money, but if you spent another $3 million a year on recruiting and you won 1 or 2 national championships, how much is that worth? That's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So, you do the math.
Doesn't the old saying go, in order to make money, you have to spend money?
Yeah. Yeah. And the Big Ten, I think that when you're already at a bit of a regional disadvantage, you have to try and create other advantages by giving the best recruiting experiences anywhere, going the extra mile, whatever it takes, getting your coaches, your most important closers, private flights so that they can zip in and out of places quickly. Those are the kind of things that you've got to do. There are teams in the Southeastern Conference doing that, and that's what you're competing against.
Absolutely, man. It just, again, the SEC, their slogan is it just means more, and it does. It does mean more down there. I'm not going to take anything away from them in regards to that because it's absolutely true. But I will say this, off topic, Michael, you've been around the SEC a lot. These colleges, man, we've touched on this before. What in the fuck is there to do in the SEC footprint, man? I mean, like I've been like around Auburn. There's not jack shit down there.
No,
man.
There's nothing down there. And when it's probably nicer now. When I was in college, Auburn was a dump. I mean, it absolutely was a dump. Tuscaloosa was a dump. It's gotten nicer. It has. It's not bad now, but it was not great. And there's not a lot to do around there. It's just still kind of a small town in Alabama. Athens is pretty nice. Lexington's nice. Knoxville's nice. but then you've got Oxford, Mississippi. There can't be, there's just not a whole lot going on there. Starkville, Mississippi, Jay, it's in the middle of a cornfield. I mean, literally in the middle of a cow pasture, and there's Mississippi State University. So that was a rundown of several of the SEC schools there.
You know what's also a dump that was really surprising to me?
What?
Columbia, South Carolina.
It would know that. Yeah, it's not a nice town.
No, it's terrible.
No.
I thought being the state capital and stuff that it would be pretty nice and the infrastructure would be nice, but it's old. There's nothing to do there.
Yep.
It's shitty. It's really shitty. And supposedly Charleston was actually the original capital of South Carolina. That's what I heard and read, from
Probably
somebody
should
who would
be.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Charleston's pretty nice, but that's not where the university is. But yeah, I mean, Gainesville, you're right in the middle of the state in Florida. I mean, that's never paradise to be just baking in the middle of Florida.
I thought Gainesville was actually close to Orlando, but it's really not.
Yeah, it's a ways north.
It's like an hour and a half away.
Yeah.
It's farther away from that than Athens is to Atlanta.
Okay. Yeah.
I looked into it.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. These are just questions that, things that just come off the top of me and Michael's head. We're like, well, what is the SEC doing?
Baton Rouge, Jay, it's got a few nice areas. It's got mostly, some rough areas, but it's got a few nice
lived
areas.
There, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. And so, but the nice areas are nice. Like they're really pleasant. I really liked my time in Baton Rouge. But down by the university, it's, it was really rough around there. Now I've heard that since then, they've torn down a lot of that old stuff and built like shops and restaurants and things like that. And that LSU is really nice. And if that's the case, LSU, in my opinion, would be one of the most attractive destinations in the SEC, because if the campus is all nice now, like they say, you've got a pretty straight shot to a very nice shopping area and things like that. And as a college kid, what else do you need?
Yeah, well, I mean, LSU is one of the premier programs already. I mean, they've won more national championships than Ohio State has in the 21st century.
Well, and I'm just telling you, if I was a kid that was like, I want to play in the SEC, LSU would be one of the most appealing places to me. Even if I was a Midwest kid and it was like, I'd like to play in the SEC, the LSU would be one of the most appealing places.
I've heard they have, my dad has actually told me verbatim that they have the craziest, angriest fans.
Yeah, it's different down there. It's a different place.
And they're absolutely despicable people to the opposing team.
Well, I mean, just being a newcomer to the city of Baton Rouge, when I wore Ohio State stuff, I was regularly insulted in public.
Same can be said for West Virginia fans. Apparently, West Virginia fans are absolutely nasty fucks.
Did you hear that, Jay? Did you hear that, Jay?
What?
When I wore my Ohio State stuff, being a newcomer to Baton Rouge, I was regularly insulted in public.
Yeah, I heard you.
Yeah.
That's not surprising to me.
Isn't
That's why
crazy?
I didn't really acknowledge it.
Yeah, I mean, but you don't think of people in the South being that rude, but it's different down there. But it's a neat place. I mean, there's a lot about Louisiana that I enjoyed.
Yeah, I don't really have a desire to ever go visit Louisiana outside New Orleans. So
yeah.
I mean, and that would maybe be a one-time trip. I actually had a former coworker that lives there, and he's been telling me for a longest time, you got to come visit. But moving on, we kind of
that was our travel section, Jay. We have to do a travel section.
Well, we did a travel section, but it had some merit to it, man. It wasn't just like totally random. There was there was a reason why we were talking about it, and the reason is we're trying to figure out how the fuck the SEC does it.
Yeah.
Anywho, moving on to Maryland, Michael. 23 in the composite, 22 commitments, similar star average to Rutgers. Can you imagine what a team like Auburn, who I mentioned before, will be doing with such a low ranking and star average?
Well, I mean, that's the thing that you can usually count on with Auburn is they're going to waste their talent. Like it's going to get there and it's not really going to be developed. And then at the end of the day, they're struggling, tooth and nail to beat a Nebraska or a Minnesota or somebody like that out in the Outback Bowl or something. So, I mean, that's definitely something that I have noticed with them as a program. But yeah, so if they had the talent that the other teams have, they would be absolutely awful.
Well, yeah, they would be awful, but they would also be calling for the coach's head.
Well,
Like,
that too. Yeah, that
well,
too.
well, at Maryland and like Rutgers, it's okay, but a place like Auburn that actually has some standards,
Yeah,
like they
no,
would be freaking out.
they don't win that much, but they expect to win. Like, and if you're winning less than 8 games, like they're going to be very unhappy with you. That's basically how it is at
Oh,
Auburn.
yeah, and they should. And honestly,
Yeah.
Maryland should because Maryland is located in Washington fucking DC, our nation's capital, and you cannot do any better than this in such a talent-rich region. I'm currently looking at the state of Maryland, and none of your top 5 players are going to your school in the
Yeah.
2025 class. The top 10 players from the 2024 class also all headed elsewhere, with your top 2 going all the way across the country, Florida and Oregon. Now Oregon's a part of the Big Ten, but still doesn't feel like it. You know, like Rutgers, you have schools like Our Lady Good Counsel, DeMatha, and St. Francis Academy all in your backyard. You should be able to lock down the best players from the Washington Catholic Athletic Conference, and you would be more than okay, but you just can't fucking do it. Why, Maryland? Why are you not keeping the best players home? I'm not asking you to go into the Southeastern Recruit Elite, but I am asking you to keep the best players home. Stop them from going to the fucking SEC. This is ridiculous. It's disgusting. It's atrocious. And I can't fucking take it anymore because it's really, really fucking up with Ohio State. It's fucking Ohio State up.
That was a classic rage rant right there. But I agree. It's very poor recruiting, and where's the Under Armour money? I mean, surely, if there's all this Under Armour money there, surely they could get some of this talent to stay home. But I don't know how much money Under Armour is giving or isn't giving. I think Under Armour has kind of struggled as a company in recent years, but yeah, I mean, Maryland, you have some talent in your state. Like, there's literally no reason why you don't win 8 or 9 games a year.
You know, I just caught myself, man. I was looking at myself in the camera here, and of course, like I'm drinking from a Big Ten cup, people.
Yeah.
We're legitimate Big Ten fans over here. We don't say this. We don't say this out of hate. Everything we say is out of love. I love the Big Ten, and it makes me sad to see the Big Ten and the state that it is in. I don't give a fuck how much money the Big Ten makes from TV deals and all that. I care all about on the field success and having the best players in the country. And the Big Ten really doesn't have that. Yes, Michigan won a title last year, but at the same time, the Big Ten went 2-4 against the SEC in bowl games.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we showed how big of Big Ten fans we are because we were very happy that Michigan won. We were not as happy as if Ohio State would have won, but we were very happy that Michigan won. We're very happy to see other Big Ten teams succeed. And they're going to have to, the bottom line, Jay, the thread through this podcast, with the exception of Ohio State and maybe Oregon, the Big Ten is going to have to get on the ball recruiting.
Michael, the expectations in this conference from a recruiting standpoint, like I said, it's really bad and it needs to be called out. And that's why this podcast exists. I don't know of any or seen any, heard of any podcast that is calling out the Big Ten the way our podcast is. And people are going to dislike us. They're not going to like what we have to say. They're not going to like what they're hearing from us, but it all comes from the heart. I'm not kidding. Ohio State is not, innocent here. We have had our struggles landing some key positions, but I do believe Ohio State takes the recruiting part serious, just as serious as anyone out there. They are an exception in the Big Ten. They operate like an SEC team without the success on the field. We are just in a demographic problem in Ohio, Michael. That's our biggest problem in Ohio State. Ohio is not a state the program can rely on to feed their program anymore, by itself. Tegra Tashub, I don't even know how to say it, is a Tashabala, the offensive guard from, I believe, the Cincinnati area, right?
Tegra Shabola.
Yeah, Tegra Shabola, that's right. He got announced earlier today as the starting right guard or left guard, but offensive guard, whatever. It doesn't really matter. He got announced today as the starter by Ryan Day. Do you realize, Michael, because of him starting, and it came down, it was kind of close between him and Carson Hinsman, but Do you realize he marks the only player in the starting 11 from the state of Ohio on
Really?
offense? Yes, on
Really?
offense.
Wow. I didn't know that. Did not know that.
If he doesn't start, that means Ohio State would not have had a single starter from the state of Ohio along the offense in the starting 11.
Yeah.
Has that ever happened? Have there ever been so few? I mean, wow. Like, that is appalling, surprising, confusing. Like, all the other ings, like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah.
That's scary. That's really actually kind of scary too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I hope to see that improve in recent years. I mean, you need to be able to have 3 or 4 guys, on the offense that can come out of the state. They got a few guys on the defense, thankfully, but I mean, you should be able to have a few guys on each side of the ball.
Yeah, man, off the top of our head, who do we have starting on defense? All right, so we have Jack Sawyer.
Hmm.
We have from Ohio, going
Uh,
along, Ty Hamilton.
hmm.
That's 2.
Sonny
Alex
Styles.
Styles is 3. Yep,
Hmm.
Alex Sunny Styles is 3. And then in the DB field, we have Denzel Burke. That's 3. 3 guys on defense starting.
And then you've got Matthews that will be playing quite a bit.
Yeah, but he's not starting.
Correct.
Starting only. He doesn't count. He doesn't count. So, with that said, again, yeah, Ohio State takes its recruiting seriously, but again, our problem is we can't rely on Ohio anymore. So that's Ohio's problem, Ohio State's problem, and Ohio's problem. Another team I wanted to touch on, make it brief, Nebraska, they're not in a talent-rich area, and their nail in the coffin was leaving the Big 12, where, they fed off Texas to give them that good talent. They no longer have that being in the Big Ten, and their state
Yeah.
can't save them, but at least their
Yeah.
best players stay in state. At least Nebraska does that. Scott Frost tried to bring better Florida talent up there to Nebraska, but it didn't work. The elite Florida kids didn't want to play there for whatever reason, I guess because it's in Nebraska, but yet here these kids are going to the Southeast in the middle of nowhere. So I don't know.
Right.
Matt Rule, I do believe, is a very good coach and the type of coach you need when it really isn't possible to bring in the best players. So you have a guy who's going to develop and, mature these guys along and have good schemes. But I mean, he's never going to have the talent to win like Nebraska did back in the day. Not at the pace they're going. No way.
No. No, and it's yet to be seen what Rule can do. I mean, if he could be a top 20, top 25 type recruiting class most years, I think he could put together a solid team there in Lincoln. But it's yet to be seen. I mean, I like some of what I see from Rule. And I tend to think he has a chance to turn them around and be an 8-9 win type team. But, we've been thinking that with coaches at Nebraska for a while now.
They can't lose at home to Colorado this year.
No.
They have to win that game.
Yeah, you got to win that game.
They do play Colorado. I'm almost positive they do.
I think so.
Yeah. Let me check. That's actually a very curious question. Yeah, they do play Colorado at home in week 2. That's what I thought. I knew they did. I was like, wait a minute. They didn't play like 2 years ago at home, did they? But no, they do play this year. They can't lose that game. Another recruitment that's just off the top of my head, man, that's just doesn't make any sense is, Caden Proctor, the offensive tackle from the state of Iowa. Iowa not only lost him once, but they lost him twice.
Yeah. 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 Down to Alabama. That stinks when you lose those linemen down there. Because there's only so many in the Big Ten region, and you lose one of the good ones down there. That stinks.
Yeah. Like I've touched on it before, like the state of New Jersey, and then 2024 cycle produced a massive, massive, massive offensive tackle that just looks like he'll play in the NFL at some point. He looks like he's already built like bigger than Tegra Tshabola. How do you say the last name again?
Tshabola,
man. Yeah. I can't say it. I think I look at his last name and
it's got the T.
I try and pronounce it. Yeah. Tshabola. Like he's literally Tegra Tshabola, like right out of high school, and which is crazy. And then they had another defensive tackle that just is bred to play football, man. And he's not going to Rutgers. He's not going to the Big Ten. He's going down south to play at Georgia.
Jeez.
back to Iowa, man. It's just, with Caden Proctor, how, why, why? And, these are all questions that need answers, and these answers need fixed immediately.
Oh, you got to keep these guys. You got to keep these
Yeah.
big
I mean,
linemen.
we're at a disadvantage enough. And, just to
When your
recap
program
all
is
of
known
this,
for churning out NFL, linemen and tight ends, like you got to be able to keep these guys.
again, I have some answers that probably couldn't be said on this podcast, or they probably just take me off of YouTube. But it's something that needs to just be understood more. I feel like the Big Ten has just been getting a benefit of the doubt for like subpar recruiting, and no, you're not getting the benefit of the doubt over here. The SEC is recruiting that good. You should be recruiting that good. I don't give a fuck what the situation is, because if you just kept your best players home, it would look a lot better than it does. But you're not doing that. And if you're not doing that, that's why this podcast exists. Stop being fucking lazy and get these kids to go to your school. Somebody like Ryan Day. Don't be fucking lazy. If other teams are having a recruiting event at the end of July and the top player on your board is attending said events and you're not holding an event, that is a massive problem. That is pure negligence. That is laziness. That is like grounds to be fired if you're Justin Fry, which we've already talked about. He does need to be fired. Like, this is despicable.
Jay, do you know why you're so angry? I believe is because a lot of people don't pay attention to the details. They just pay attention to, oh, Ohio State's got the #1 class in the country. That's great. And I'm appreciative of that. That's wonderful. But you have to pay attention to the details. It could be one or two players that could make the difference between winning a national championship and not winning a national championship. It could be that big July bash that's the difference between getting one of those players and not getting one of those players. And that's just the game that college football is.
It's really always the saddest thing to hear from people. They're like, oh, yeah, we missed him, but we'll be fine. We'll be fine. Really?
Yeah.
Are we really fine? Because our linebackers the last couple of years have looked pretty pathetic, and we missed some big-time linebacker recruits that could have fixed that.
Yeah, that's true.
We've missed some big-time secondary players that could have helped us against Georgia in the semifinal game.
Yeah. Well,
and it's just like people just ignore these things. It's like, oh, it's okay. No, it's not okay, because we're losing these games. You have to hit on these guys.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. These were guys that they had a beat on and just ended up losing for whatever reason. But, well, Jay, a little bit of a frustration with Big Ten recruiting, but
little bit of frustration. I'm fucking pissed off, man. I just decided to look at this the other day. I'm like, this needs done. We have got to address this.
But I am optimistic about the Big Ten's successes on the field this year, and I am hopeful that those successes on the field will fuel future recruiting gains. But I think that pretty much wraps it up for this episode, doesn't it?
Yes, it pretty much wraps it up. And, we lost, just want to add on, back to that point of, oh, we'll just be fine. We lost that cornerback from St. Francis Academy to Auburn, by the way. He decommitted from Ohio State, and everyone say, oh, well, that makes room for Dorian Brew out of Texas, which, he's actually, I don't know if he's from Ohio or Texas, but he played in Ohio for a long time. Yeah. And it's like, okay, they're like, okay, we'll be much better with Dorian Brew. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Where does Dorian Brew go? He doesn't go to Ohio State. He commits to fucking Oregon.
I hope you guys listening are following these names, because Jay knows these guys' names inside and out. So if you're not following, just know that it's a big-time recruit that Ohio State lost out on.
Yeah, a five-star.
And Jay still remembers it.
It just happened a couple months ago, man. It's in my mind. I look at it, and I'm very much concerned. I'm pissed off, and people have kind of brushed it under the rug, man. Just kind of with politicians and stuff. It's like gaslighting, man. It's like, oh yeah, we said this. I'm like, oh no, we didn't. We didn't say that. We never said that. And it's just like, oh well, maybe you didn't say that. And it's just like, no, you're not fucking hiding from me, you fucks.
Yeah, we've had some misses, and Ryan Day needs to finish strong on a class. He's always had good classes, but they've always finished fading. And so it's time for him to finish a class strong.
And this class is starting to tank, by the way. It's been nothing but 3-star heaven, and we're going to get this receiver out of California that was a plan B guy. Yeah, he's a nice, solid player.
I think
but he's not Joe Miles.
Heartline's looking at taking a 2-star.
if there's anyone that actually deserves the benefit of the doubt, it is Heartline. The problem
I
is this has
agree.
been a problem like every year in Ohio State. After July, recruiting tanks. Like they really don't hit on anyone under Ryan Day between the like August to early signing day. They really don't.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll have a couple of good surprises, Jay. But that wraps it up for today. Thank you guys for watching. We will be back soon.
Enjoy the games, everybody.